It is the final Monday before the month of September. The pennant races are heating up. Superstars are coming back to their teams, and your pal Sully has to itch his nose. This is Locked On MLB. There, I did it. Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. And on Monday, I do a crossover with the host of Locked On Arizona Diamondbacks. He's right over there. That's Millard Thomas. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. How would you describe me? I've been a baseball podcaster for more than the last decade. I've been a television producer. Got an Emmy nomination for my troubles. Been published in several magazines as a baseball writer. Like my pal Stacy Gotsoulias, who's sick. Get well soon, Stacy. I've appeared on HBO Sports, and I'm a teacher too. I teach. The youth of America are being led by Sully. That's Millard Thomas, who's sitting there in his luxurious 17-bedroom luxury condo overlooking the luxurious Locked On MLB studios. Millard, tell people a little bit about you. Why are we listening to you?
Yeah, I wish any of that was true. I'm a, multimedia journalist and a graphic designer, as I like to tell people on my podcast. So follow my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com, so you can see all my latest work on there. Follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up the show account, Locked On Diamondbacks. Of course, we're on YouTube as well, Sully. Locked On Diamondbacks on there as well. And, of course, we're on all your podcasting platforms.
You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pod. Same handle for Instagram and Twitter. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Hey, it's funny when Millard and I get together, we don't rehearse much, but we know what topics we're going to hit because we want this to be as spontaneous as possible. And for this particular show, we send each other lists of things we want to talk about. And we had too many for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's hit as many as we can. So naturally, my first thing I bring up is something not on the list. Creator Thomas 24. Did you see? And I'm going to talk about this in depth on the podcast, Locked On MLB podcast, coming up on Thursday. So there's a little teaser for that show. But did you see that the Mets retired number 24 for Willie Mays over the weekend?
I did not see this.
Yeah, Willie Mays, who made his first appearance with the New York Mets on May 14, 1972, the same day I was born in Willimantic, Connecticut.
Whoa.
Willie Mays hit a home run against the Giants to win the game. He only played a season and a half with the Mets. He was clearly fading, and by the end, when he was in the World Series in 1973, he only played the first two games. He didn't come to play in any of the remaining five. He was over the hill, basically. But I, for one, even though he only had two relatively uneventful seasons with the Mets, I, for one, am happy that they retired his number for two reasons. Willie Mays is still alive. He was not well enough to appear at the ceremony. He lives in Menlo Park, which is a suburb of San Francisco. He couldn't make the trip to New York. I believe it was his son who represented him. We need to celebrate great figures in baseball history while they're still alive instead of constantly waiting for them to be dead. So I'm for any celebration of Willie Mays while he's still with us. But also, yes, his 2 years with the Mets were somewhat mediocre and not memorable. But he is a major figure in New York sports history because of his time with the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. And while San Francisco has celebrated, they have a giant statue for him. The official address of what's Oracle Park is 24 Willie Mays Plaza, San Francisco, California. He needs to be honored in New York as well. And if someone looks at number 24 and says, who's that? They say Willie Mays. Did he play for the Mets? Yes, but he also played for the Giants. I think that's a positive thing. I'm for celebrating. Anything celebrating Willie Mays is okay with me.
All right, pro celebrating Willie Mays. But if I'm the Mets, 2 years in my uniform. Now, he was an all-star back-to-back years at age 41, 42. Wasn't more of an honorary thing because his numbers were pretty mediocre. Yes, but still, I guess it's a nice gesture by the Mets. But if I'm a Mets fan, I don't know. Is that moving me retiring Willie Mays' number when he really didn't spend much time in New York? I don't know. I mean, it was cool when he played for the New York Giants, but in terms of in that Mets uniform, I don't know. I don't know if I would retire that number, Sully. I don't know.
To me, it's to honor his time
Mm.
with New York, similar to Hank Aaron's numbers retired by the Brewers. He only played like a season and a half with the Brewers, but he was such a major figure in Milwaukee sports history that his numbers should be hanging in Milwaukee as well as Atlanta.
So, did the New York Giants convert into the New York Mets?
No, the New York Giants became the San Francisco Giants.
So that's where I think I have. If the New York Giants became the New York Mets, then I think I would feel differently. But because the New York Giants became the San Francisco Giants, it's like two different organizations. Then I would feel differently. It wasn't like the New York Giants rebranded themselves into the New York Mets. It's a whole different franchise, basically. That's now
Yes, it
honoring.
is.
So that's why I think I feel differently about it.
All right, well, there you go. Okay, but
Yeah, a
let's
nice
get on.
little debate on Willie Mays.
Well, I did. I thought that was a softball. Okay, so let's talk about some of the stuff I did want to talk about. Let's go. First things first. The pennant races are getting interesting. But they would be a heck of a lot more interesting if the Milwaukee Brewers could get out of their own way. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When the Brewers pulled off the trade where they handed off Hader to the Padres and started giggling because they sold him a lemon in the parking lot, it suddenly made the Padres and the Brewers bad at the same time. And the Brewers have not, around the time of the trade, the Brewers were up 2 games in the division. Well, they're now 6 games out. We're recording this before the games on Sunday are over. They're now, but best case scenario is they're 5 games out. And so they've dropped an entire week of games in the month of August. But they've also fallen out of the wild card race. And the thing that I find like absolutely just befuddling is that they're now 2.5 games behind San Diego, and San Diego is falling over themselves. Now, granted, the Brewers have had a tough schedule. They've been playing, Los Angeles a few times, St. Louis a few times, Tampa Bay a few times. So they haven't been playing tomato cans, but they've also played the Cubs a bunch, and the Cubs seem to have their number, including a couple of walk-off games. So I don't get it. Like, this Brewers team has good pitching, and they have some good players, and yet they can't, they can't play decent baseball. And the wild card race would be a heck of a lot more exciting if a game or two, just like if we're heading into September with just a game or two separating San Diego and Milwaukee, 2 teams that look like they were a lock for the playoffs just a few weeks ago are now fighting for their playoff lives.
Yeah, it feels like that third wild card spot in the National League right now in that race. Feels like no one really wants to grab it because both the Padres and Brewers are just kind of floundering. And I was reading an article this morning just about how the Brewers basically mismanaged their bullpen since that Josh Hader trade, because you trade away Josh Hader, right? You say buy Hader, just like Mano back in the day, the rappers. Shout out to all my people who know that song. And for the Brewers, you trade away Josh Hader. You bring back a nice little package, I think, in return. And one of those pieces in that package was Dinelson Lamet, who they DFA'd and cut immediately after that deal. And he goes to Colorado. He's made a few appearances. He's got like a sub-2 ERA in Colorado. He's looked really good. And a big reason they were okay moving Dinelson Lamet and cutting him is because they thought they were going to get Trevor Rosenthal back from the San Francisco Giants to be a key back-end reliever for them. And Trevor Rosenthal, who just reported in the last day, he had another hiccup in his setback to return to the major league level. So he doesn't look like he's going to be a reliever at all for the Brewers this season. And he's someone that gave up a top 20 prospect in their own organization to the Giants. So you cut Lamet, you're not getting back Trevor Rosenthal, and you traded away Josh Hader. That's basically 3 strikes in your bullpen. And it's a major hit for the Milwaukee Brewers, who a couple of their bullpen guys are struggling in the month of August. Devin Williams has had a couple of back-to-back bad outings by the Brewers. And you look at someone like Corbin Burns, a starter who's, I think, the reigning Cy Young Award winner. He's been roughed up a couple times in August as well. well. Brandon Woodruff seems to be back in the mix and seems to be performing well again, just like Freddie Peralta. But Corbin Burns has been struggling. Devin Williams has been struggling a little bit. It just doesn't feel like they have that depth in their bullpen anymore after trading away Josh Hader, missing on Trevor Rosenthal, just cutting Dinelson Lamet. I think they missed that depth that they used to have back there in the back end of their bullpen.
I'll tell you another factor that has come about in the past, roughly the past month. If you go back to just almost exactly a month ago, 26th of July, the Brewers were leading the division by 3 games over the Cardinals. The Padres were secure. The Braves, of course, were secure with their spot. And the Phillies were on the outside looking in, and only a few games ahead of the Giants and only a few games ahead of the Marlins at that point. And so the Phillies looked like they were maybe fading, especially with Harper no longer on the team because of injury. The Phillies won 22 out of their next 30 games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I went to one of the games where they beat, like they beat up Cincinnati. They beat up Pittsburgh. They beat up Cincinnati twice. I was there for one of the games where they had a 4-game sweep of the Washington Nationals. And yeah, they're playing bad teams, but guess what? If you want to pad your win-loss record, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And I really think the fact that the Phillies, only 4 teams in baseball won 20 games in that stretch. The Mets, the Dodgers, 5. The Mets, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Braves, and the Phillies. So the 4 elite teams of the National League and the Phillies. And I think the fact that the Phillies just started beating up on all those lousy teams while the Padres and the Brewers couldn't get out of their own way. I think if the Phillies had a mediocre month, there would be a 3-team scrum for that final wild card spot. But instead, the Phillies have pretty much cemented themselves into the second spot. And now with Bryce Harper returning to the team, and he came first, I think his first at bat,
Yeah.
he hit a 2-run single. I just feel very, very good. You know, the Phillies have had some other injury issues too, but when you bring back the reigning National League most valuable player, they've lost Zach Wheeler. He's on the 50-day disabled list, and that obviously is going to hurt the team because you can't take an all-star pitcher like that. But Aaron Nola's pitched great. Kyle Gibson's pitched great. They've been able to pitch the way they need to, and quite frankly, they've played a lot better than I thought they were going to do. And we're sitting here. It may be the thing that costs either the Brewers or the Padres a trip to the playoffs.
Yeah, unlike the Padres or Brewers, the Phillies are actually taking advantage of their moment right now. And they've been doing it, like you said, without Bryce Harper in their lineup, which makes it even more impressive. And I think because Bryce Harper's been out their lineup, it put the onus on some other players in that lineup to really step up. And you see guys like Kyle Schwarber leading the National League in home runs. Guys like Alec Baum and Rhys Hoskins have really turned around their seasons as well. And so for the Phillies, I also think they're just a little bit more desperate than those other teams in the wild card race, because we've talked about this on previous pods. Like, the Phillies are in the second longest playoff drought after the Marlins, the longest playoff. After the Mariners. Longest playoff drought in the National League. So the Phillies, just as bad as anyone, wants to get back to the postseason, just wants to feel alive again and just feel that energy running through the course of their veins. And I'm hoping to go see the Phillies on Tuesday because they're going to be here in Arizona playing the D-backs. I'm hoping to see that game on Tuesday, ASU night versus the Phillies on Monday. So shout out all my ASU fans out there. But yeah, the Phillies right now, it does suck. Zach Wheeler just placed on the 15-day injured list. So it's like, as you get back one MVP superstar, Bryce Harper, you're losing a Cy Young candidate in Zach Wheeler. But like you said, Aaron Nola just had a complete game, 9-inning, I think 10 strikeout shutout. Like, he's been really good recently as well. So the Phillies team right now, it's clicking on all cylinders. And with the Padres and Brewers just kind of like floundering and not really taking advantage of the situation, like, if the Phillies just keep doing what they're doing, they should be solidified in that playoff mix. And we're going to see the Mariners and Phillies both end their playoff curses in the same season. It's going to be really crazy once we get to the MLB playoffs.
All right. Well, another superstar is coming back from the injured list to a team that has all but clinched a playoff spot. We'll get to that in our next segment. But let me just ask you a question. Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everybody around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high or get a DUI. This has been a message from NHTSA. If you feel different, you drive different, drive high, you get a DUI. So the Los Angeles Dodgers are, I mean, for a while it looked like they were going to win 90 games before we got to September, and they still could.
Mm-hmm.
They still could, but is suffice it to say, in fact, I think you should go to BetOnline and bet on the Dodgers winning the NL West. I think that's a good bet. Well, you would get exactly what you put back. You win nothing. You say, I bet $1. Okay, they won. Here's your $1 back. You know, it's like
you'll probably lose money betting on that.
Yeah, you probably will. I don't know how betting works. But LA, look at LA is interesting because Walker Buehler's out for the year now. Craig Kimbrell, their closer, their nominal closer, has been, let's be fair and call him shaky. Okay. Cody Bellinger, their one-time MVP, is batting he has a sub 670 OPS. Max Muncy, if you look at his stats and go, wait a minute, I thought pitchers weren't batting anymore. Oh, that's Max Muncy. Oh, that's interesting. Chris Taylor is not having a particularly terrific season. And yet they're a cinch to win 100 games. An absolute cinch. Partly because their lineup has Freeman, who is everything they would have wanted him to be. Trey Turner, who's everything they would have wanted him to be. Mookie Betts, who is not having an MVP season, but is certainly super productive right now. Will Smith, no, not that Will Smith. No, the other Will Smith has given them the pop. And look I'm not going to be a slave to win-loss records because I think they can be deceiving. That being said, the fact that Tyler Anderson and Tony Gonsolin's combined win-loss record is 29-3 shows that they're at least pitching well enough to win the big games. Along with Julio Urias, those are your top three starters. All are, eating a ton of innings. All have ERAs sub 2.7. And guess what? Someone else with an ERA sub 2.7 is going to be coming off the disabled list. And his name is Mr. Clayton Kershaw, arguably the greatest Los Angeles Dodger of all time. If you're into WAR and sabermetrics, I still think any combination of Drysdale and Koufax takes that title. But the fact that Kershaw's lowest point of his place in Los Angeles Dodgerdom is the bronze medal at this point. It's good to have someone like that back. And lest we forget, Kershaw was having a fine season before he got injured. He struck out 88 batters in 85 and a third innings, only walked 15. His ERA was 2.64. He was having a good, solid season. Maybe not his typical Cy Young season, but he's done very well. By the way, another former Cy Young Award winner, David Price, has found a really nice niche on the team as a super reliever, and good for him. Former Red Sox World Series champion, Mr. Cute and Cuddly. But the addition of Clayton Kershaw as it's essentially their number 4 starter for the postseason just kind of shows the intense depth that this Dodger team had. And while I've been singing the praises of St. Louis and of the New York Mets, it's tough to look away from this Dodger team.
Yeah, Kershaw, Mount Rushmore of Dodgers. If we're talking the regular season, because the postseason stuff, I don't know what Clayton Kershaw. But hey, that's a story for another day. Let's talk about the positive Kershaw, because like you said, maybe not a Cy Young season this year, but still 85% of prime Kershaw, still a stud, still an all-star pitcher. And if he's your number 4, I mean, look, Kershaw in any other rotation is still a number 2, number 1 frontline starter for most rotations. If he's there with the D-backs, he's right there with Zach Gallen neck and neck as the ace of that staff, right? But with the Dodgers, they're embarrassment of riches. He's their number 4 starter. You're going through their lineup. You're going through the struggling players, right? The Max Muncies of the world. You also went through the highlights of the players, guys like Mookie Betts and other players who are performing well. The Dodgers lineup. One guy you didn't mention is someone like Gavin Lux, who was one of the top prospects in baseball, and he's batting 297 with an 800 plus OPS. Like, despite the Dodgers having guys like Muncy and Chris Taylor struggling, they still have 6 dudes with 800 plus OPS, and they still got someone like Joey Gallo on their bench who's since coming over as like a 900 plus OPS. Like, the embarrassment of riches on the Dodgers is crazy. You look at their rotation. You mentioned Tyler Anderson and Tony Gonsolin. Like, people want Tony Gonsolin to be the Cy Young Award winner. I think that's a little bit crazy, but he's still been fantastic this season. They also got Dustin May back. Like, you're gonna have Dustin May in that rotation potentially with Kershaw, with Urias, and Anderson, and the other pitcher I just mentioned, who I already forgot his name. Like, you're still gonna have 5 starters going into that rotation who could be, number 2, number 3s, number 1s on pretty much any rotation in baseball. And that's still without Walker Buehler, like you mentioned. You got David Bryce as your super reliever now. Craig Kimbrell, he does look like 2018 World Series Craig Kimbrell when he was super shaky during that playoff run. So if I had to say a weakness of that Dodgers team, it is that closing situation, because they have a bunch of relievers that they could put out there, but it's probably going to be a little bit of a revolving door from the closer situation from the Dodgers. I'm probably going by the closer by committee approach once I get to the postseason and just ride whoever hot hand or just play the matchup or whatever you want to do there, because I don't think I'm trusting Craig Kimbrell in a big postseason matchup. If you put Craig Kimbrell in those high leverage moments once we get to the postseason, I think that could be, that could be the acts of death for the Dodgers. That could be the thing that stops them. So if I'm the Dodgers, I'm not putting Craig Kimbrell in those situations. That's the only thing that gives me hesitancies about this team. But other than that, I mean, there's not really many weaknesses around this Dodgers squad right now.
Well, let me just say 2 quick things. They should just forget the idea of the closer. Just use whatever reliever is the best reliever for that particular situation. Don't worry about the save. Why do you worry about the save in the postseason? No one cares. Doesn't matter who gets the save. And eventually, when Alex Cora won the World Series with the Red Sox in 2018 and Kimbrell was shaky for that 9th inning of the clincher, he said, bring in Chris Sale.
Yeah.
He's rested. He's not going to get another start. I don't want him to have another start. He was supposed to start the next day. No, come on in, Chris. Get the final outs. It doesn't, and I'm sure Craig Kimbrell would love to have been the one to close the game, but tough. Just get at this point when you have the likes of like maybe a Dustin May's not going to get a start. Andrew Heaney's not going to get a start. There's a bunch of people who like Chris Martin's had, a couple of maybe someone who they don't have a big scouting report on. Just mix and match, get those wins. Or, God forbid, you lean on the starting pitchers to go very deep in the games. I want to just say this quickly because I am a Clayton Kershaw supporter. Mm-hmm. I know he has lost a bunch of very big games over the years. I'm not going to pretend that he hasn't. He has had 7 games in the postseason where he's pitched 7 or more innings with 1 or fewer runs allowed. And in all of those games, the high in the hit total was 3. That was the peak. And so he's had 7 games over the years in the postseason where he has come through. And one of those games, no one seems to remember, was in the World Series. In fact, if the Dodgers had won that World Series, there would have been an argument that Kershaw was the MVP. He came out of the bullpen and was dominant in Game 7, pitching a bunch of shutout innings out in relief. The one game he lost was the one game where there was a trash can being banged, which is, of course, when you take a look at that Astros team. Sorry, folks at Locked On Astros. The fact that they clobbered Chris Sale, they clobbered David Price, they clobbered CC Sabathia, they clobbered Clayton Kershaw. All these people who were dominant pitchers who suddenly looked like they were throwing batting practice. Clayton Kershaw dominated the Astros in Los Angeles, and then suddenly threw batting practice in Houston, and then went back to dominating them in Los Angeles. And we found out that they were doing something a little shaky. So it's cruel because that would have been his John Elway moment. That would have been his moment of like, you can't, there's nothing more you can say against me. And quite frankly, there was an argument for him to be the MVP of the World Series that they finally won, the COVID year. He pitched very, very well in that World Series, winning both of his starts. I think everyone in Dodgerdom would love to win a World Series that wasn't COVID related or shut down. I think they would love to be able to have you won a World Series with that weird year. They would love to be able to check off and say, yeah, we also won this year. It's to sort of, take any caveat off of the championship run that they've had.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to get into a Kershaw back and forth with you. That's probably not the point of today.
Oh no, that's not. And look at as I said, there are several games that in the postseason where he came up incredibly small, and the Astros went banging the trash can for every single one of them. Came up incredibly small the year he won the MVP against St. Louis in 2014. He came up small there was when he came out of the bullpen and let up those two massive home runs in the potential clincher game against Washington in 2019. I'm not letting him off the hook for his postseason failures. I'm just saying that he has also had times where he has come up, and I just wanted to make sure that I'm cutting off the emails I'm going to get at the pass, because he has had 7 games where if you look at those lines, that's what you expect from an ace pitcher: 7 or more innings, 1 or fewer runs, 3 or fewer hits. You would take that from anybody at any era. So 7 times he came through like that. So I can hear the Dodger fans who follow me starting to go tippy type. So I'm just putting this out. I'm cutting off the tweet at the pass.
We know what, Dodgers fans, you could tweet at me because he's made 30 postseason starts. If he only got 7 good starts under his belt, well, what kind of winning percentage is that? That's terrible. Dodgers fans, Clayton Kershaw, Peyton Manning, greatest regular season performers in their respective sports. But when it comes to the postseason, they're terrible. And that's my hot take.
Well, I think here's what I think is where you have to be able to. I mean, like Kershaw's lifetime ERA in his 15 years, and he's won 192 games. He's pitched more than 2,500 innings to an ERA of 2.49, which is just terrific.
Insane.
And that same pitcher pitches to an ERA of 4.19 in the postseason. So his ERA is more than a run and a half higher in October. And of course, the biggest crime of humanity against him was 2014, where he won the Cy Young, he won the MVP, and he not only lost his 2 games to St. Louis in the division series, but his ERA was over 7. And this was coming after an NLCS against St. Louis, where he went 0-2 with an ERA over 6. I mean, he has had grotesque postseason series over the years. So I'm not pretending that he hasn't. I'm just trying to,
Yeah, and because the reason I get on because the reason I get on him is because of that contrast. Because if you just compare that to players like of the similar ilk in his generation, like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, 2 guys we were considered on the same level, right? Verlander, career regular season ERA is like a 3.26, postseason 3.4. Max Scherzer, career regular season ERA 3.12, postseason ERA 3.2. So basically, Verlander and Max Scherzer, they're the same guy, regular season, postseason. But for someone like Clayton Kershaw, it's literally like two different pitchers you get from the regular season to the postseason. That's why I give him so much, just angst and crap for it, because it's like, how did this guy convert into a pumpkin once we get to the postseason? Like, what's going on with him? Is it like a mental thing? He feels that pressure. Like, I don't know what it is with Clayton Kershaw, why his game seems to falter once we get to the biggest moments.
Well, and you have to remember about that 2014 season is you had the greatest contrast that during the regular season, there's no getting around the fact that Kershaw was the best pitcher in baseball. He just was. His stats were through the roof. The Dodgers finished in first place. He won the MVP. But there was such a perfect contrast when I told you he lost his 2 games against St. Louis in the postseason, and you contrast that with his division rival Madison Bumgarner that same year, who threw complete game shutouts in the wild card game and the World Series, was the MVP of the National League Championship Series against the same Cardinals, and had one of the most mind-boggling World Series performances ever, where he threw a complete game shutout, won another game, and came out of the bullpen to get the 5-inning save to clinch the World Series. I mean, I will put that October against any in baseball history, because he had to do it against 4 different opponents. And so that you have that contrast of and Bumgarner had a fine season, but he wasn't a Cy Young winner. So it became and that was the year where it became so clear that Kershaw had the great regular season, but wet the bed. And the team that he wet the bed against, Bumgarner dominated in the NLCS and just cemented his own reputation as one of the great postseason pitchers of our time.
No, that's interesting you bring that up, Sully, because I didn't realize this. Now looking back at it, Kershaw won the Cy Young Award in 2013 and then won Cy Young and MVP in 2014. So like you said, he's cemented as the best pitcher in baseball, arguably the best player in baseball at that time. But both in the 2013 and 2014 postseason, he's taken out by the St. Louis Cardinals, who absolutely clobber Clayton Kershaw.
Right.
And like you said, Madison Bumgarner goes in there and ends the Cardinals. So I wonder if the Cardinals doing that kind of work against Kershaw when he's having those incredible all-time regular seasons, if that just, invites ghosts into his head and just kind of messes him mentally for the rest of his postseason career, where he's like, you know what, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was because I'm an MVP in the regular season, and then I face the St. Louis Cardinals team. They just absolutely destroyed me in the postseason.
I mean, he won 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years, and you could have made the case the year he didn't win. That was the year that R.A. Dickey won with the Mets. Kershaw arguably was better, but R.A. Dickey was the better feel-good story. And you know what? I'm not going to cry that he didn't win 4 Cy Youngs in a row. Someone who did win 4 Cy Youngs in a row was Greg Maddox. And people forget that Greg Maddox's postseason career was somewhat checkered for a while. He did horribly against the Giants. He did horribly against the Phillies. And he was not the dominant. I mean, this was a guy, he pitched in the steroid era. While he was throwing to a 1 ERA in the regular season, his postseason ERA was several runs higher. Again, Maddox and Kershaw, first ballot Hall of Famers, no question about it. But both of them in the postseason, Smoltz was the better postseason performer. Randy Johnson had his postseason ghosts as well. He had a bunch of years where he got pasted in the division series. And he made up for it with the great World Series he had against the Yankees. But Schilling was the one who had the reputation of being the great postseason pitcher of the two of them. And it's certainly that difference between the two certainly was aided by the fact that Johnson got clobbered when he was with the Yankees, and Schilling continued to pitch well while pitching with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm also looking at that 2014 postseason run. Like you said, Cardinals take out Kershaw, and then Madison Bumgarner wins the championship series MVP against the Cardinals, where he pitches great. And then he goes on to win the World Series MVP as well. So regular season MVP was Kershaw. And then you see Madison Bumgarner come in and win championship series MVP, World Series MVP, and basically retakes over the narrative as being one of the best pitchers in baseball. And then we have this negative narrative against Clayton Kershaw at that time as well. So very interesting stuff that we just delved into, honestly. I didn't realize all that after looking back at it.
And then his next postseason start was a complete game shutout against the Mets in the wild card game. He just was on such an unbelievable roll. Hey, I want to two closers in baseball, two closers who have World Series rings. Neither one were the pitchers who clinched the World Series. Each did something very stupid the other day. One of them was Aroldis Chapman. I've made my feelings known about Aroldis Chapman. He was the closer for the Cubs, but Rajai Davis made sure he was not the one to clinch the World Series with the home run I still can't believe happened. And he was he did something very stupid. He is on the injured list just when the Yankees need bullpen depth, and Chapman was starting to pitch better. Can you want to tell me why he's on the injured list?
I saw in our group chat he was on the injured list, but I don't know why, Sully. Why do you make it there?
I think he was getting a tattoo.
Oh, what do you mean?
He was,
don't most
he
players
was,
get tattoos?
yes, somehow he got one, I don't know, that missed. I don't know. I'm too hairy to get tattoos. I never got a tattoo myself. But here's the deal, folks. If you're making millions of dollars and trying to get your team back to the World Series, here's a tip from your pal Sully. Save the tattoos for November, okay? So apparently there's an infection or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he went to A-Rod's cousin. I don't know who did that, who was giving him a tattoo. But that's got to be, especially for the Yankees, who have already lost King, have Nestor Cortez injured, are finally coming out of their funk. They went on that 5-game winning streak after their big funk, and look like, okay, they're getting their mojo back. And, they suddenly have a vacuum in the closer role, and Chapman was starting to pitch better. And then, boom, he said, now I'm going to get an anchor on my arm or whatever he decided to do, and he's on the injured list. So that's pretty stupid. But I'll say there's something even stupider. And I've been screaming this for years. There is no excuse to end a game with a bases loaded walk. Ever. And we saw it last night in a wild, weird game where Nolan Arenado came back from the injured list, or from the paternity list. He became a new dad and hit a home run, 4 hits. But the Cardinals were losing to Atlanta. Kenley Jansen, former LA Dodger, who was also a bit shaky in the postseason, if you look at his resume, came in and could not find the strike zone, including hitting Arenado and walking some batters. And there was kind of a weird sort of infield chopper. Put the ball in play, people. Things happen when balls are put in play, where that scored the tying run. And then he walked in the final run. Walked it in. I can understand in Little League. I can understand in the minor leagues. I can understand in college. I cannot understand in the major leagues, especially with Kenley Jansen, who's an all-star, who's a talented pitcher. If you got 3 balls and a pitch is out of the strike zone, the game is over. Lob it down the middle of the plate. The worst thing that happens is he hits a walk-off grand slam, and then you tip your hat to him. He could swing early and pop it up or ground out. He could hit a line drive to someone. He could swing and miss. He could take it, but throw it down the middle of the plate. It will, because when he pitched he threw to end the game, it was practically a wild pitch. It was in the dirt. It will never cease to amaze me that a game can end with a walk-off walk. That makes no sense to me. Thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. And if I'm Kenley Jensen, literally underhand, pop up, throw it to them. Because guess what? If they see that little eephus pitch coming, they're going to try to muscle that thing up so hard and try to crush the ball. And guess what? You have 9 defenders behind you. You might just have someone be in the perfect spot. It might be an atom ball. So I totally agree with this philosophy. It's one of the main things that irritates me. It's like a big pet peeve of mine when I'm watching a baseball game, because if there's there's no reason to walk the guy in that situation, the game is going to end automatically. So at that point, it's might as well just let the guy try and hit and just hope your defense is in the right place to catch the ball, because there's really no other option that you got as a pitcher. Because if I'm just going to walk the dude, what's the point of that? My team is already going to lose at that point.
Yeah. Guy leads the league in saves. He's a 3-time All-Star.
And it wasn't even and it wasn't the only walk-off walk we saw on the night, which is crazy. We had 2 games in one day with the walk-off walk.
Yeah. Lob it down the middle of the plate. Especially you're trying to establish that you're a legit playoff team, and maybe even have images of catching the Mets dancing in your head. You have a chance to beat the Cardinals, one of the best teams in baseball. Lob it. Well, do you want? I'm going to lob another one down the middle of the plate and say, Millard Thomas, where can people follow you?
You know what? You can follow me on Twitter at Creator Thomas 24 for my personal account. Look up Locked on Diamondbacks, the show account, Twitter, Instagram. Follow me on YouTube, Locked on Diamondbacks on there, and of course, we're on all your podcasting platforms.
And remember, Millard Thomas. Let's review. He's anti Mike Trout.
Yep.
He's anti Willie Mays. He's anti Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah.
You can follow me at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Giving you a salad bar of topics and talking about people from Willie Mays to Kenley Jansen and everyone in between. This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover for the 29th day of August, 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. That's Millard Thomas. Call him Creator Thomas 24, at least on Twitter. Hey, let's fist bump.
Yep, we like playoff